Welcome to today's HealthLine Innovator webinar from the American Association of Kidney Patients titled Rewriting the Rules of Blood Type, How New Advances Could Improve Transplant Access. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jerome Bailey, Director of Patient Engagement and Advocacy for AAKP. AAKP is the oldest and largest fully independent patient-led kidney patient organization in the U.S. AAKP is proud to host this webinar series as part of our mission to empower fellow kidney patients, family members, and care partners, healthcare professionals, researchers, and policymakers. AAKP HealthLine and HealthLine Innovator webinars fall under our Center for Patient Research and Education. We believe patient and care partner education is an integral part of an individual's treatment, and to that end, AAKP is a champion for full patient care choice, the protection of the patient-doctor relationship, and the elimination of artificial barriers and government determinants of health that impede patient care choice and access to available treatment options. At AAKP, we work to ensure that patients have a central role in the research and development process so that unmet needs are identified and unique patient insights and lived experiences fully inform innovation and the product development lifecycle. This includes clinical trials to regulatory action and payment decisions. Through our initiatives, we aim to ensure patients have a central voice in research and innovation. By leveraging lived experiences and unique insights from the kidney community, we help drive meaningful advancements across the entire product development lifecycle, from clinical trials and regulatory processes to payment decisions. As medical science progresses with personalized medicine, cutting-edge technologies, and novel treatments, the potential for better outcomes in kidney care has never been greater. Today's topic is an exciting one. Advances in transplant science are opening new possibilities to help more patients receive life-saving organs. A well-known challenge in transplantation is blood type compatibility. But new research is exploring whether enzymes can safely change blood types, potentially allowing more donor organs to match more patients. If successful, this approach could mean more available donor matches, shorter wait times, fewer canceled transplants, and improved access, especially for underserved communities. We'll talk about what this technology can do today, what's still being studied, and what it could mean for patients and families when applied in real-world care. In advance of today's webinar, AAKP conducted an independent flash survey through our Center for Patient Research and Education to gather insights on transplant wait times, blood type challenges, and the emotional journey patients and families face managing kidney disease. To walk us through what we heard, I'd like to introduce AAKP's Vice President and Chair of Policy and Global Affairs, Paul Conway. Paul is a passionate patient advocate for patient-centered care, patient participation in true shared decision-making, and the use of patient insights in kidney research. As a kidney disease patient himself for 48 years and a 28-year transplant recipient, he has been recognized for his advocacy work with several national awards, including the President's Medal from the American Society of Nephrology and the Presidential Volunteer Service Award for Lifetime Achievement. Paul has served in 4 U.S. presidential administrations, including as Chief of Staff for the U.S. Department of Labor. He was selected by the FDA to serve as the inaugural chair of the FDA's Patient Engagement Advisory Committee and has served on the American Board of Internal Medicine, Nephrology Specialty Board, as well as multiple CMS technical panels related to dialysis quality improvement measures. Paul, thank you for joining us. I turn it over to you to run us through our flash survey results.
Great. Thank you very much, Jerome. And this is such an optimistic topic. In 2019, President Trump signed a bipartisan executive order that was supported by the Congress and by the American people. It was the 2019 Executive Order on Advancing American Kidney Health. And that executive order made it really clear that the number one treatment in the United States for kidney failure should be an organ transplant. This echoed President Obama's 2016 White House Summit on Organ Donation and Organ Transplantation. It is great to see that the echo of that policy from 2019 has continued as national policy priorities in the current Congress and in the current administration. In September of 2025, Secretary Kennedy, the CMS Administrator, Dr. Oz, and the FDA Commissioner had a press conference in which they restated the national priority of extending more opportunities for transplantation to all Americans in need of a kidney transplant. One of the biggest barriers to this is compatibility, and that's why this is so important. AAKP is deeply committed to innovations and new technologies that allow that hope and that promise to extend to all those who are in need of an organ transplant. We are committed to the policy, and we are just as committed to advancing innovation, science, and research. Let me go ahead and walk through our slides to show you some of the insights that we got from our respondents, because I think these are quite telling about the journey that patients have. This was a national flash survey on new advances in transplant technologies. We asked folks if they were on the wait list or how long they had been waiting. Those who indicated they had been waiting for less than 1 year was about a third, 33%. 1 to 3 years, 44%. 4 to 5 years, 11%. We didn't have anyone that indicated that they had been on the list longer than 5 years. And of those, not applicable, about 11%. We asked what the hardest part about waiting for a transplant was. 35% said the uncertainty of when a transplant will happen. 22% cited the long wait times. 8% cited financial logistical challenges. Medical complications or hospitalizations, that was a lower amount at 5%. Emotional and mental health challenges, 3%. And other personal issues, which people did specify at 27%, and they went into great detail to our staff. It's heartbreaking, the number of issues that people have and that they talk about when they're waiting for a transplant. I know this well. I waited over 3 years. It is a tough journey. It's even tougher when you have issues related to compatibility. We asked folks if they had pursued or did they explore pursuing a living donor transplant. Those who indicated no, but that they were interested was 42%. That's important because that's a group of folks that we need to do better with in terms of educating how to approach somebody, whether they're a relative or a friend. Those who said no and that they were not interested was about 31%. Optimistically, those who said yes and they found a donor was 16%. And in terms of a challenge, those who said yes, they had pursued a living donor but did not find a match was 11%. So about 27%, nearly a third of folks, or a little more than a quarter, had pursued a living donor. We asked folks, had they been told that their blood type affects readiness or ability to receive a transplant? And here, about 15% said yes, no, 70%, and not sure, 15%. Let me just take a minute and say that yes contingent that indicated 15% is quite consistent with what you'll read in peer-reviewed research and in the media. In the US, it's estimated that there are 11,000 of the 100,000 folks that are awaiting a kidney transplant that are sensitized, highly sensitized. And if you look at data in the US and in Europe, it's about 10 to 15%. So in our survey, it actually tracked pretty close to where scientific research and where media reports are. We asked if folks had experienced challenges related to blood type compatibility when seeking a transplant. 12% said yes, 74% said no, 14% indicated that they were not sure. We asked folks if they had actually been told they were sensitized or have a high antibody level, PRA. Yes, 11%, no, 81%, and not sure, 8%. On these not sures, we actually think there's a communications issue sometimes with patients not being told directly or people not addressing the issue of highly sensitized patients in a transparent manner. We asked how sensitization impacted the transplant journey. You'll see here that the folks who indicated that increased waiting times, it made it harder to match. Sometimes they just weren't certain, about 20% of them. 0% said it limited the donor options of those respondents, and others went into more detail with our staff where you started to see some of these issues and frustrations. We asked folks, would they consider accepting a donor kidney that has been treated to make it compatible with your blood type if it required closer monitoring during the first few weeks after a transplant? Here, 46% of the respondents said yes, 10% said no, and about 44% said they were not sure, but they would need more information. We asked folks if they would consider participating in an early clinical study involving new approaches to increase donor organ compatibility, such as blood type conversion. You had almost 25%, 23% of respondents saying yes, 23% of the respondents saying no, but optimistically, 54% indicating that they're not sure, but they would need more information. So, what you see here is a picture of the reality of understanding sensitization, especially with blood type, among those who are pursuing an organ transplant, and what a barrier it can be. For those Americans, the 100,000 that are waiting for a kidney, if you think about 10 to 15% of them who are having a barrier, encountering a barrier, having a problem because of high sensitization, that is a huge number of people. It's not just lives that we're talking about livelihoods. In order for them to see the day when they could get a transplant, we must encourage greater science and innovation to take place in clinical trials. And just as importantly, beyond the individual, in order to achieve national policy of making transplant opportunity increase and making it a potential reality for everyone in need of an organ transplant, we must tear down this barrier. And the only way to do that is to advance science and research and innovation and educate more patients on what to ask, and to make certain that patients, when they're encountering issues related to blood type and sensitization, that they are told in an honest and transparent manner so that their education and awareness level increases and they know what to ask for when choices come into the marketplace. This is what we're committed to at AAKP. Every person with organ failure deserves an opportunity to be considered for an organ transplant. And if there are barriers there, we need to take them down. Let me throw this back over to Jerome. Thank you so much for watching today. And thank you, Jerome, for putting together this fantastic program with these great participants.
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate you being with us today. That really underscores how complex and personal the transplant journey is and why continued education and innovation in this space matters so much. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Rob Carroll, Chief Medical Officer at Aviva Biomedical. Dr. Carroll is a recognized leader in transplant medicine, nephrology, and immune genetics with more than 20 years of experience. He has been a pioneer in blood group incompatible kidney transplantation and has played a key role in advancing transplant care in Australia. He has served as National Clinical Lead for the Transplantation and Immunogenetics Service with the Australian Red Cross, Lifeblood, and is an adjunct clinical professor at the University of Adelaide. He has also contributed to more than 20 publications and multiple clinical trials. Joining us from Australia, Dr. Carroll will help us better understand this emerging technology and what it could mean for patients. Welcome to the program.
Good afternoon and good morning, and many thanks for the opportunity to speak here. And what a fantastic insight into people's journey with regards HLA sensitization and blood group incompatibility. So hopefully we can talk about that a little bit today and answer some of those questions. But I echo your commentary. I still look after patients. I also look after the wait list here in Australia, and all of those issues with regards long wait times and blood group incompatibility are the same here in Australia. So I'm hoping today that we can talk about a potential future where those barriers aren't there. And I also take your points about how we would go about implementing these changes, because it will need changes to the allocation system. So thank you very much, Jerome. I'll be talking today about Avivo Biomedical. It is a biotech company from Canada, and I am an HLA director and also a nephrologist. So in order to talk to you about this technology and how we might implement it, I do need to talk to you about some basic ideas about blood group. We will talk about something called an H structure, and this is just a sugar that is on every cell in your body, but in particular it's on your blood cells, but it's also on the vessels that go in and out of the kidney. And so the H structure is what we call blood group O. And actually this is the base unit of all blood groups. And if you add just one more sugar, a molecule, you can make it into a blood group B. Or if you add a slightly different sugar, you can make it into blood group A. So we'll talk about that. The second issue I will be talking about is that incompatible or ABRI transplantation is now been going on for decades. And although it's not commonplace, it is a well-known and well-understood process with protocols around it. The second part of my talk will talk about what is the actual impact of blood group incompatibility with regards access to the donor, the deceased donor transplant waitlist, how the blood group of your donor and yourself impacts whether you get a match within paired exchange programs, and then as we've talked about from the survey, how that impacts on people being highly sensitized. And then finally, I'll go through how the Avivo enzyme technology works, and how that might therefore allow us to treat some or all donors and make them all blood group O. So as mentioned, this H antigen is what we call blood group O, and not that we should get into what those actual sugar building blocks are, but you can see there's a base unit, which is a red triangle, a yellow circle, and a blue square, and this is blood group O. And if we take that base unit and we add a yellow circle, we can make a blood group B, and if we add a yellow square, we can make blood group A. And so therefore, you can see that if you are blood group O, your body has never seen the yellow square and the yellow circle, and therefore blood group O people make anti-A and anti-B blood group antibodies. And this is essentially the crux of blood group incompatibility, and it's also the crux of why blood group O people struggle to find additional organs. I'll take you through this table, but across the top there we have the donor, and you can see that on average there should be 45% of the population is blood group O, 40% is blood group A, 11% blood group B, and around 4% blood group AB. And if you're a blood group O donor, that's fantastic because your kidney can go to any of the recipients. So if you follow that first column on the left down, and that is fantastic for blood group A, B, and AB recipients, because they can not only accept their own blood group, but they can accept a blood group O kidney. But if you're a blood group O recipient, you can only accept a blood group O kidney. Blood group O kidneys can go to any recipient, but blood group O recipients can only accept a blood group O donor. If we want to do a blood group incompatible transplant, and we do, there is a blood group A kidney there on the left, and you can see the A antigen on its surface. We can't directly give that kidney to an O recipient on the right because of all of these anti-A antibodies. So what we do in classic ABO incompatible transplantation is that we put somebody on plasma exchange, and it's a bit like being on a dialysis machine for another 5 hours, so you can imagine how much of an impulse this is. So people who are going for a blood group incompatible transplant can spend up to 3 to 5 weeks having plasma exchange every other day on top of their routine dialysis to get rid of all of the bodies. But if we do that, then we can actually put this blood group A organ into an O recipient. The few things that we have to do here, though, is that 4 or 5 weeks before you are slated to have your transplant from a live donor, you have to have Rituxan or rituximab. Then you start on anti-rejection medication. Oral FK is tacrolimus or tacrolimus, and mycophenolate is mofetil. And then, depending on how high or how much of these anti-A or anti-B antibodies you have a week or 2 or 3 of plasma exchange or immunoabsorption. And then once we get those antibodies down, if we get those antibodies down, then the transplant occurs. And after the transplant, starting from around day 1 to day 2, we make sure that the antibodies don't rebound. And if they do look like they're coming up, then people generally have a plasma exchange somewhere between day 3 to day 10. And if those antibodies stay relatively low, then from week 2, essentially, an ABO incompatible is just like any other transplant. But there is a lot of work before the transplant, and there can be a little bit of work with removing those antibodies to let those antibodies come back slowly and onto the kidney in a process that we don't really know how it works, but it's called accommodation. So if you get to 2 weeks, even if the antibodies come back a little bit, the kidneys do very well long term. And here I'm just showing you some recent data that shows that the long-term graft survival of ABO compatible and ABO incompatible grafts is essentially very, very similar. It might not have been the case 20, 30 years ago, but in the modern era, they're pretty much the same. So what is the current state of play? And I think what you can see from this graph is how frequently somebody gets a transplant based on their blood group. And you can see that as we go from 2012 to 2024, the main thing is that people are getting transplanted quicker. So the higher you are up on that graph, the quicker you get transplanted. So if for blood group AB, absolutely, you get transplanted very quickly. But you can see that if you're blood group A, you get transplanted quicker and have consistently been transplanted quicker for a decade or more than if you're blood group B or blood group O. And blood group O is slightly worse than blood group B, but there is a definite disparity. And it isn't just in the deceased donor listing that blood group O people suffer longer wait times. In the National Kidney Paired Exchange Program, but in all paired exchange programs, whether they're local or internationally, blood group O recipients always wait longer. Now, this is only in a period of 3 months, but you can see that for every year that the number of people in the paired exchange who are recipients of blood group O, they always predominate. And so not only are they waiting longer, but there's more of them waiting in paired exchange programs. And so if you are a blood group O recipient, you wait much, much longer in a paired exchange program than if you're blood group A or B. In your survey today, you talked about the 10% of people that really struggle or are really concerned about being transplanted because they've got HLA antibodies. And if you have HLA antibodies to prospective donors, then you can't accept kidneys from those donors. And this is a algorithm or a estimation of the numbers of donors that we need to have in a system in order for someone to get a 95%. This isn't a 100% chance of getting a match, but a 95% chance of getting a match. And so if your CPRA is 99, so you have antibodies to 99% of the population, then in order for you to get a 95% chance of a match, there needs to be 300 donors. And that's fine, because in the US, you have way more than 300 donors. But in Australia, for example, we only have 500 donors. So you can see already that in small countries with small donor pools, that if you're highly sensitized, you're going to find a difficulty getting a match. And if you're 99.9% sensitized, then you need 3,000 donors to have a 95% chance of a match. So this isn't a 100% chance, it's only 95% chance. If we purely look at just the number of donors in the US per year per blood group, It's great because there are 7,000 blood group A donors, so that gets us over the 99.9 threshold. For blood group B donors, there are 2,000, so it's close but not quite. And for blood group O, there are 9,000 or nearly 10,000 donors. So that's good. But you can already see there's a disparity here in the numbers of donors for the numbers of recipients. Because there is this issue with blood group compatibility with blood group A and blood group B people being able to receipt a blood group O organ, then technically blood group A people do very well, blood group B do better again, and blood group O people stay the same because they can't actually increase the numbers of donors that are compatible to them. But if we had Avivo's technology, then essentially all those A's and all those B's could become O, and if you add those all up, then essentially that leaves you with around 20 kidneys in the system. So it doesn't get you to the 99.9 threshold, 99 threshold, but it does improve the equity of access for blood group O recipients. So this is just a different way of explaining what I've shown you in the table, and this is from the OPTN data that shows you what the blood group type is in the general population. So there are 45% of people in the general population in the US are blood group O, 40% are blood group A. And if this was a direct comparison into the deceased donor population and a direct comparison into the living donor population, then deceased and living donors should have exactly the same ratios, but they don't. And what you can see is in the deceased donor population, we have a predominance of blood group O people, and we've lost a few of the blood group A potential donors. And if we look in the living donor situation, it's even more acute that essentially we're losing potential blood group A live donors. And there are a number of reasons for that, and the bulk of that really is blood group. If we say that we could redress this imbalance and lack of A donors in the system, then technically that increases the number of deceased donors by around 1,600, and it increases the number of live donors around 2,000. And if that was truly replicated into the system, then that would be a 30% increase in live donors, because we're making it permissible for blood group A donors to be a donor, either directly to their loved one or into a paired exchange. And there is the ruse here. So I've made this AI generate image. I'm 50, but I've tried to make it work. But what we're getting at here is the elephant in the room for paired exchange programs is that it's very, very difficult to match blood group A, B, and AB donors. It's not just a recipient issue. Paired exchange programs struggle to find donors for blood group A, B, and AB donors because of blood group incompatibility. And you've already seen from my previous slides that there's way more blood group O recipients in paired exchange programs. So if we could take all of those A, B, and AB donors and convert them into O, you can see the little man on the right there, or a little person on the right, is that now all of these people can donate to A and B recipients, because they're essentially now all the donors in a paired exchange program could be O, and that has major implications for highly sensitized recipients because you're increasing the donor pool in a paired exchange program. Again, if you're a numbers person rather than a graphics person, this is a combined number of deceased and live donors into the system in 2022, and this is the distribution as it is. And again, the numbers of organs from A people that are actually utilized is way less than expected. And this is where this concept of thousands of missed opportunities is coming from. So if we go back to the concept that I brought up in the beginning of the talk, A and B organs only have one sugar difference between an H antigen or blood group O. And Avivo has proprietary enzymes that essentially cut off the sugar and makes them an H antigen. Sounds simple, and it is, but the beauty in here is that the enzymes that Avivo has work at 4 degrees C, they work at 37 degrees C, they have A and B enzymes, and they're very specific for these actual sugars. Unlike ABO incompatible transplantation, where you can only really do it with a live donor, here the concept is that living and deceased donors can have their organs retrieved. We need to put them on an organ perfusion device. We perfuse the kidney either at room temperature or body temperature or at 4 degrees C with the enzymes for a number of hours. Then we rinse out the organ and rinse out the enzymes, and then we have at the end of that process blood group O kidney, and that O kidney can go into an O recipient and a B recipient, even though it came from an A person originally. And the phrase that people are using now is enzyme converted O, or ECHO kidney. The Avivo group, together with a group in the University of Cambridge a number of years ago now, took a number of kidneys and perfused them at normothermic, which is normal temperature, so room temperature or body temperature. That's the NMP on the left-hand side. And they took kidneys and they perfused them with hypothermic, so 4 degrees C. And at the top of this deep colored purple bar, you can see that 100% of the kidneys expressed 100% of the A antigen. But after an hour, there was less, and after 2 hours, it was almost gone. And we know that we only need to get the A antigen away down to levels below 20% to allow normal transplantation, and we know that because of A2 kidneys, and I'm happy to take questions later. But we can get the A antigen off the kidney with around 2 hours to suitable levels, and definitely by 6 hours. But the only group that's done this, there are some people who have taken enzymes and taken off the B sugar. And as I take you through this picture, what we're showing here is a microscopic view that has been stained, and the little squiggles there are actually what we call the glomerulus, which is the singular filtration unit of the kidney. And that you can see that on this filtration unit of the kidney, at the very beginning at the top where it says pre-treatment, that in the left-hand column, you can see BAG, which is the B antigen, and you can see that the kidney is expressing lots of the B antigen. But after an hour of perfusion with their B enzyme, you can see that the B antigen is being removed, such that at the bottom left-hand corner there, at 3 hours, you cannot see the antigen anymore under the microscope with special staining. So this kidney now has lost its B antigen, and in the right-hand column, you can see there's the H antigen, or the blood group O, and you can see at 1 hour the B antigen has been converted and nibbled back in effect to the H antigen. So within 1 hour, really, the H antigen or the O blood group is visible, and importantly, by 3 hours at the bottom, the H antigen is definitely there and the B antigen is gone. And they were able to show that when they reperfused this kidney, that it didn't have any bad rejection. So what does rejection look like under the microscope? So here what they did is they didn't treat a discarded B kidney, and then they gave it anti-B containing plasma from an O person. And what happens is on the right hand side where there's an arrow, that's a blood vessel, and in the middle of that blood vessel you can see all the tiny blood vessels have clotted and has caused the kidney to not be perfused, so the blood actually stops going to the kidney. On the left-hand panel, that you can see is that the circular thing there is actually the glomerulus that I talked to you about that was in those pretty pictures before. And here you can see there is blood and congestion in the filtration units. And the top arrow is trying to show you that that is a capillary or a very fine blood vessel within the kidney, and that is blocked. It should be an open circle, and I'll show you that on the next slide. And the bottom black arrow on the left-hand panel is showing that you're actually bleeding into the tissue of the kidney, and this is irretrievable. But what they showed here is that if they did the kidney and they got rid of the B antigen and they reperfused it with anti-B antibodies, then nothing happened. You've got this pristine looking circular thing on the left, and you can see that there's lots of little circles within it, and those are the capillaries or the blood vessels, and they're now nice and open and transparent. and you can imagine blood going through. And on the right-hand side, you can see that that blood vessel is completely patent with a white circle in the middle, so you can imagine blood flowing through nicely. What they then did in this group is they used a whole body donor or a decedent study, and they put this converted B kidney into a person who was brain dead, who had donated their body to medical science, which is synonymous with some of the early work that Bob Montgomery's done with transgenic pig kidneys, for example. And what they were able to show here is that it takes around 48 hours for the B antigen to regenerate on the kidney. So just like every living thing, kidneys try to repair or regenerate surface molecules. So on the BAG panel, you can see 4 hours and 48 hours. So at 48 hours, the B antigen is coming back. And you can see that on the bottom right-hand side, that the H antigen at 48 hours is beginning to fade. And that's because these antigens on the surface of blood vessels are continually regenerating. So there is a window of opportunity, 24, 48 hours. The kidney remains being blood group O, but it does start to blood group B again after transplant. And just to show that Avivo has done something similar with their A enzymes. So at the top have shown that the A antigen is present, but with treatment it's gone. And you can see that at post-operative day 3 or POD3 at the very bottom there, that the A antigen is beginning to regenerate. So again, in a decedent model where the organ has been converted, put back into the person, the kidneys worked, we know that at day 3, the A antigen starts to regenerate, breaking the blood group barrier. We have an A kidney here with an A antigen. In the normal scheme of things, those antibodies would prevent that from happening, and we would need to remove those antibodies if we wanted to do ABO incompatible transplant. But what happens is that if we enzymatically convert that A kidney into O, or make it an echo transplant, we've now made it into the H antigen. And if the H antigen is there, even if the anti-A antibodies are there, it doesn't matter because they won't bind. And so we can put that newly converted echo O kidney into an O recipient, irrespective of what the antibody status is. But I told you that there are issues possibly at 72 hours. If we can take any kidney, AB, B, A, and we can put A and B enzymes into a perfusion device, then we can make all of those kidneys into O. And so all kidneys can go into any recipient. And if you increase the donor pool size, I've already shown you that there's better matching. And technically, if there's better matching, there's less rejection. And if there's less rejection, each of those individual kidneys last longer. And at the bottom there, you can see that I showed you that original slide or original table tessellation. And that shows you that all organs can go into all recipients. I've shown you also that there's a proof of concept that there was no rejection for 72 hours and that the kidney worked okay. And that creates a compatibility window. But I've already told you that in ABO incompatible transplants, we already manipulate people 3 or 4 times in the first 2 weeks after transplant. So all that we're doing here is slipping into a pre-established paradigm where we don't have to do all the work with the recipient for 2 or 3 weeks beforehand, but we still think we need to do a fair bit of work for people who are receipted their kidney, but we've created a compatibility window where any organ can go into any recipient. So it takes time and it takes money, and although there have been 2 decedent studies now, we do have a way to go to first-in-human studies. We have got some funding from the Canadian government, but we need additional funding to move through all of these preclinical production phases, the feasibility studies, and the registration studies. So we are at beginning of our GMP production. So we have achieved some of these milestones. We have plans to do more decedent studies, and we hope that we can go to what we call an IDE submission with the FDA soon in 27, and then move to these studies in the deceased donor realm and even in the live donor realm, such that we've got plans that we hope to be launched within sort of 4 to 5 years. But this is all balanced on financing and all balanced on FDA approvals and EMA approvals, for example. So I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Harrell, for that insightful presentation. We'll have a few questions for you shortly, but first we'd like to bring in a patient perspective. Next, I'm pleased to welcome AAKP Ambassador Charles Cranford. Charles has lived with kidney disease since his early 30s and was diagnosed with FSGS while facing a lung transplant wait list. He and his wife explored living donation, but initially they were not a match. Through a paired kidney exchange program at Johns Hopkins, Charles ultimately received a life saving transplant thanks to a multi donor chain that allowed several patients to receive kidneys. However, Charles is back on the transplant wait list. Charles is deeply committed to giving back. He works with multiple organizations to promote organ donation and advocates for patients and living donors. Please welcome Charles to the program.
Thank you.
So, Charles, can you take us back to when you first learned you needed a transplant? What was going through your mind at the time?
Yeah, and thank you, Jerome. Yeah, that was a time a bit more than 15 years ago. And during that time, I was thinking, well, my kidneys are truly failing. There's no particular doubt about that. And then for me, I was thinking that in all likelihood, dialysis would be something that would be staring me squarely in the face. And at that time, I started reading and studying as much as I could about the transplant process, about dialysis and what was involved in that. And it was just something that I just knew I had to pursue something different if I wanted to avoid being on the waiting list. And that's when I got involved with Living Donor and then finding out about the paired kidney exchange in order to try to make it such that I could not be on a waiting list because, as you know, far too many people who are on the waiting list, pass away before they can get that precious organ.
Now, you've been on the transplant wait list twice now. What has been the most challenging part of being on the wait list?
All right, for me, it's the idea of you actually have no control. You're waiting, and you feel somewhat helpless in that regard. At the particular time that I was being waitlisted, they were indicating I had about a 5 to 7 year wait, and that was saying to me that certainly, again, dialysis was inevitable. So it was just challenging to be in a situation where you want to do something, you want to remain optimistic, and I did, and I remained hopeful, and I was persistent in trying to learn everything I could about, all right, how can we fix this? How can we manage this? How can we make the most out of the situation that is very difficult from start to finish?
Can you talk about how your blood type or matching process, affects your journey to transplant?
Yes, I certainly can. And listening to what Dr. Carroll was just saying to us is very, very encouraging because I happen to be one of those people that is a group O. I'm O type negative. And that meant that the donor pool for me was very, very small because that blood type is just as he's already indicated, a lot more difficult in order to get a match. So with innovation and all the things that he's talking about, it would make it such that a person like myself could certainly get a living donor, a lot more quickly. So I'm just so, enthused and energized about that because being O just makes it a lot more difficult. And a real short story there, when I was as I often say, campaigning for a living donor, someone from my church actually said that they were willing to be a living donor after I had, made my case to the people in the congregation. But then once she found out that we're not blood type compatible, it was like the wind went totally out of her sails. Like she was willing to be a direct donor to myself, but when we're talking about the paired kidney exchange and her then giving a kidney to someone else and then me getting a kidney by another method, I lost that opportunity simply because she couldn't be a direct donor. But with the kinds of innovation that Dr. Carroll is talking about, something like that could happen. And I could already, I could already have perhaps been transplanted at this point. But that was a lost opportunity because of the blood type incompatibility.
Yeah. What advice would you give to someone currently waiting for a transplant?
I would say be your own best advocate, your own champion. Try to find out as much information as you can about listing and multi-listing, because in many places you can list in more than one location. Myself, for example, living here in West Virginia, I listed in both Virginia and in Maryland because I felt the donor pools would be larger there. So I multi-listed. So certainly know about that and don't deny yourself of that particular opportunity. And it's one of those things where there are lots of support groups that are out there, a lot of organizations that provide that. So by all means, I think you want to connect in that way. Know your transplant team very well. Be certain to ask questions, to challenge when perhaps you said no or that won't work for you. Understand why that is, but be a strong advocate for yourself. Do your research, do your homework, and persist and never give up.
Yeah. Good message. Good message. If there was one message you want patients, families, and even researchers to take away from your story, what would it be?
I would say again, be a champion for yourself, for the donor recipient. For all those who are in the era of research, it's realize what you're doing. Realize the lives that are being saved potentially. Realize that particularly in America, the money that's being saved that would not be put into Medicare, because tons of money is put in Medicare for dialysis. The number of people that we cannot have on dialysis, reducing the number of people on the waiting list. This research is invaluable. And I think to the extent that we can get with our lawmakers, you mentioned Hill Day earlier, and that's something that I'll be involved in, where you're actually going to Capitol Hill or wherever your particular legislators or lawmakers are, and lobby to them and say how important it is to save lives, quality of care of patients, and also saving money.
All right, Charles, thank you very much for sharing your experience. We'd now like to bring back Dr. Carroll to join Charles for a brief discussion and Q&A based on questions submitted by our audience. This first question, we're going to direct it to Dr. Carroll. So for patients hearing this for the first time, what's the simplest way to understand how changing blood types could expand transplant access?
I think the simplest way is to say that we can now change the blood group on a blood group A and B kidney, and we can make it into O. So that means that it is permissible to put or make organs into blood group O so they can be the universal donor. But there's a lot of work to do after this and research to prove that it's safe and to develop the protocols to do that. But essentially, we've had an enzyme that can take off the sugars of one kidney to make them into blood group O. Is the simplest way to think about it.
Also, this next question is for Dr. Carroll. If this technology is successful, which patients stand to benefit the most?
So Charles has talked about equity, and the people that are going to benefit the most are really that technically it's a change in the donor pool for blood group O recipients, and to an extent blood group B. That is the group that's going to benefit the most. And then the second group will be those highly sensitized individuals of a particular blood group. So highly sensitized blood group O and blood group B will be the next group that benefits because the pool for them has substantially changed. You could argue that it might negatively impact blood group A because you've only got a fixed number of kidneys. But again, the fact that we think additional A's from the deceased donor pool and additional A's from the live donor pool will come into the system, we hope that it's a win-win situation.
Another question for you, Dr. Carroll. Patients often hear about exciting breakthroughs. How should they balance hope with realistic expectations when it comes to something like this?
Yeah, I understand that, and we want to be cautious, but we also want to be optimistic at the same time. And what I like about this technology is that we already do blood group incompatible transplant removing antibodies, and we don't even change the kidney, and it still works. So I think there's an element here that it's definitely real world, but we have to go through all the regulatory hoops to prove that it doesn't temporarily change the kidney function, that it doesn't have unintended consequences, but that's the rationale and the reason for the FDA regulation. So we have to go through those hoops, and we will do. But ostensibly, all of the protocols are here, and we're only temporarily changing the kidney. So we're hoping that this should be a routine process through all of those hoops that the FDA will require us to do. So yeah, it is years away, but it isn't longer than that necessarily.
This next question is for Charles. Why is it so important to you to raise awareness about organ donation and living donors?
A good question, and why I'm so passionate about is that there are so many people who are living with kidney disease and they aren't aware of it. In the kidney community, we often talk about crashing into dialysis, and that's a situation where people are thinking they're fairly healthy, there's no symptoms that they feel, and suddenly they find themselves in the emergency room finding out that they need dialysis. So I think if we're looking at prevention, early detection, those kinds of things will prevent that from happening. And to the extent that a person knows that they have kidney disease earlier in life, you can already do things in terms of lifestyle changes or medications or what have you that can actually slow the progression of the disease to the point that perhaps you won't need dialysis or you'll need it a lot later in life or not need a transplant. All those things can really enhance a person's life if they know about it a lot earlier and take the appropriate steps.
Thank you, Charles. Last question for you, Dr. Carroll. What are the biggest safety or scientific questions researchers are still working to answer?
For blood group incompatibility or for
Yes.
kidney transplants in general?
Blood grouping incompatibility.
Yeah, look, I think the biggest thing for us at Avivo is moving on with additional studies and proving that it is safe, and then moving through that process to early clinical trials. I mean, those are the requirements that we have to do. That's the first comment, and the second question. Sorry, remind me.
So, and I was going to say, the biggest safety and scientific questions researchers are still working to answer.
Yeah, I think it's making sure that in every kidney that's ever converted that it's safe, and so we know that it is in two or three that we've done in those published case series, but we just have to have a bigger body of evidence, so more of the same to prove that everybody is the same or every kidney acts the same way when it's treated. And I think the next thing for us really, it isn't just applicable to kidneys, and I know having looked after people on dialysis and peritoneal dialysis and transplants for decades now, it's pretty awful, the patient journey, waiting for kidneys, even as a bystander, as a clinician. But in the heart-lung space, it's even more acute, and uh, this is where we're going. It's not just a kidney-only offering here. It's for heart, lung, and liver people too. So, and in some of those cases, it's even more acute. So we are looking to do all of those experiments and all of these replicated experiments in all the other organ systems. And I think the biggest issue will be not that the technology works, because I'm sure it will, but it's the fact that your entire allocation system will have to change if you have the option to make deceased donor organs into O. And I think the other issue will be it will revolutionize the way that paired exchange kidney programs work. So it's going to be the practicalities of implementation, not necessarily the science or the technology. It's going to be how do we allocate and how do we change our paired exchange programs if all organs can be O.
Well, thank you very much. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to Dr. Rob Carroll and Charles Cranford for being a part of today's program. If anyone watching has additional questions for our speakers or about today's webinar that we were unable to get to, please email us at info@aakp.org, noting the webinar title in the email subject line. If you're not already a member of AAKP, we encourage you to join. AAKP offers free membership to patients, their family members, as well as living kidney donors. To become a free member, join online at aakp.org/join or by phone at 1-800-749-2257. To receive all the benefits of membership, please be sure to include your email address when signing up. As an AAKP member, you will be notified about all of AAKP's upcoming events, the latest in our educational program series, and when opportunities arise where your opinions and experiences are needed to help inform innovation, advance care, and make a meaningful impact to improve lives. We encourage you to respond to our flash surveys and other engagement opportunities to help us elevate the independent patient voice and change status quo kidney care. As an AAKP member, you will also receive a digital subscription to our bi-monthly magazine, AAKP Renal Life, and can select to receive any of our 5 different electronic newsletters. We also invite you to check out our blog to read some great articles and patient profile stories, and follow us on social media for all the latest news and to keep up on what's trending. AAKP is dedicated to helping kidney patients across the disease spectrum understand their condition and take control of their health care. We are proud to offer a variety of resources for both patients and care partners. By visiting our website at aakp.org and clicking on the AAKP Store button at the top of the homepage, you will find a variety of educational brochures and online tools to help to order or download free of charge, including titles such as the Understanding Kidney Transplantation Brochure or the Conversation Starter, questions to ask your healthcare team about choosing the right therapy for you. You can also order materials by phone. Registration is open for the 8th Annual Global Summit on Kidney Disease Innovations. Join AAKP in partnership with the George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences for this international virtual event held May 8th, 18th, and 19th. The summit brings together patient advocates, researchers, clinicians, and innovators from around the world. Virtual participation is free for all. Visit the AAKP website to register today and reserve your spot. We are also excited to announce the date of the AAKP Public Policy Summit. The 9th Annual Policy Summit will be held on July 23rd at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. Registration for this free event is now open, and a virtual option is available for those unable to join us in person. Please continue to visit our website and follow us on our social media channels to keep up to date on the latest event information. Be sure to save the dates for AAKP's 2026 Awareness Days. May 1st, we recognize National High Potassium Awareness Day. This day focuses on potassium balance, recognizing symptoms, and the importance of regular lab monitoring and treatment adjustments. We'll also be hosting a virtual event that brings together clinical experts, patient voices to offer a more practical, personalized look at potassium management, from how potassium works in the body to how food choices and preparation methods can impact your levels. It's designed to give you real world tools you can use right away. Then on June 3rd, we recognize National Itch Day, shining a light on symptoms that's often overlooked but can easily impact quality of life for people living with kidney disease. Beyond these awareness days, AAKP supports patients year round through our Every Patient Safe campaign, which focuses on emergency preparedness, infection prevention, and overall patient safety. To learn more about to learn more and access resources, visit the AAKP website. Finally, you can visit our special AAKP on demand webpage at bit.ly/AAKP on demand to watch a number of great presentations and webinars, all available on demand from our 2025 events and programs, as well as 2026 programs as they occur. You can also visit the AAKP YouTube channel at bit.ly/YouTube for more great content. We would like to extend a heartfelt thank you to our webinar speakers, Dr. Rob Carroll, Paul Conway, and Charles Cranford, for graciously participating in today's Healthline event. Their expertise and insights greatly enriched the discussion and provided valuable information. And thank you to everyone who joined us.